Good. Good morning, class, once again. And we did What is Government, the chapter of civics, where we studied about what a government is, its organizations, its work. Clear? Then we did the various organs of the government, where we talked of legislature, executive, and judiciary. Legislature being the lawmaking body, executive being the law executing body, and judiciary being the checker of the law, keeping a check on the laws which are made, punishing those who do not follow, who are going against. Then we talked of the levels of the government, where we talked of the levels and the all country level. That means the nationwide level was the national level. Then when we were talked of the state, it was the state level. Below it were the district levels. Apart from district, the block level, then the panchayat, etc., municipal corporation, etc. Then we also talked about the three lists of works which are undertaken. Then those were the union list, the state list, and the concurrent list, where the government works by dividing its work into national level works, then those works which are only taken up by the state government, and those works which can be taken by both national as well as state government, known as concurrent list. Then we talked of the various types of governments, where we talked of the term democracy as told by Abraham Lincoln, who was the President of America from 61 to 65. He ruled America. And we talk of the democracy being the government of the people, by the people, for the people. That means it is the people who play the major role in being electing the people whom they want as their representatives. We talked of various forms of governments. Can you see my screen? Yes, you can. Okay. So various forms of governments, where we talked of the democratic form, which is one form. Then we also talked of a form of government which is called monarchy, where the king is the head, king or queen rules the country. We have some names here like United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Bhutan, Nepal, which were following this monarchy form of government. And if you remember, even in India earlier, when the kings and queens were ruling, we were also following monarchy. And we, after the British came, later when they went away, we followed democracy. Then we talked of authoritarian or dictatorship type of a government where one person is the head. Children, don't talk. Switch off your mic. Where one person is the head and he does not has people's interest in mind. He only thinks about himself. And in that type of government, the dictatorship, where one person is boss, he's all in all, he's doing whether right or wrong, but what he thinks is good, he does that. So we, in this connection, talked of Hitler, who was a dictator of Germany. We talked of Mussolini, who was a dictator of Italy. We talked of Gaddafi, Muammar Gaddafi, who was the dictator of Libya. We talked of Hosni Mubarak, who was the uh, what do you call dictator of Myanmar. We talked of Saddam Hussein, dictator of Iraq. Then we talk of democratic governments. Now, this particular paragraph from here till this much gone. No, no, no. Sorry. Till this much. Okay, we'll quickly take up because I've given an explanation and I will be sending that explanation 4. Okay, explanation 1, 2, and 3 were sent to you. Explanation 4 will be sent after this class, in which I'll be dealing just quickly with the democratic governments. That means the people elect their representatives. They follow universal adult franchise. The word universal means all, adult means people who are 18 plus, and franchise means right to vote. So we'll talk of it in explanation 4. Now moving further is the history of adult franchise. That means when was it started? How was it practiced? How were the people, adult people, were given the right to vote earlier? Now, by adult franchise, we mean that every adult citizen, male or female, irrespective of the caste, creed, color, race, religion, property, educational qualifications, religion, or profession, is entitled to vote in the elections. The idea underlying this principle is that sovereignty lies with the people as a whole. Now, they talk of one factor, that whoever is 18 plus of age has the right to vote. And you cannot demarcate it, ki, okay, she's a female, she will not cast a vote. She's a black, she'll not cast a vote. Or she's poor, she'll not cast a vote. Or he will not cast a vote. Anyone can cast his or her vote. Nobody on earth can stop them. Clear? It's a law of adult franchise. Everybody who's 18 plus has a right to vote if he or she is the Indian citizen or the citizen of that particular country. But all this never happened earlier. Earlier, people called themselves democratic, but they followed different rules. Now, we'll first read about Did You Know? Okay? Now, the first jotter says France gave women the right to vote in 1945. It was very late when the women were given the right to vote. In France, only the men used to give their vote. Women were not allowed. They was considered okay, they are just doing household work and they should not be given the right, which is wrong. It is partial democracy because democracy says every citizen has the right to vote. Then coming to the second jotter, earlier in Switzerland, where direct democracy is practiced, women's suffrage was introduced in 1971. It was so late in Switzerland that it was introduced that women can give the vote. Then, third jotter, the first general elections held in India in 1952 were based on the principle of universal adult franchise. Please underline the date. 1952 was the date when India had its first elections. India got free in 1947. India got the constitution in 1950. Constitution means laws, written laws. Written laws were given to India, were formulated by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Bhimrao Ambedkar. Okay? But the first elections which were held in 1952, 2 years later after the constitution was framed. In those elections, India was the country which followed universal adult franchise. That means ever since the elections happened in India, it gave rights to all, irrespective of their caste, color, creed, sex, religion, property, rich or poor, whatever. They said Indians believed that all should be given the right to vote. Then the fourth jotter says non whites were not allowed to vote in South Africa till recently. Now they are telling us that in South Africa, the people who were white were given the right to vote. गोरे लोगों को right था वोट देने का. But it was the blacks who were deprived of the right. Until recently, it was followed. See how bad. Now, coming to the explanations, it is important to know that during the British rule, only a limited number of people were allowed to vote. They usually belonged to the higher strata of society. Several leaders and freedom fighters were against this unfair practice. Gandhiji, Jawaharlal Nehru, Vallabhbhai Patel demanded that all adults should have the right to vote. When the constitution was being drafted, they took special care to give the right to vote to all adults of India. Now, when the British were ruling India, at the time when the British were there, that means before 1947, it was only a few rich people in India who were given the right to cast their vote. Now, since India was at that time under the clutches of the British people, so the people of India had no say. But gradually, when India got its freedom in 1947, and when it drafted its constitution, Gandhiji, Jawaharlal Nehru, Vallabhbhai Patel, all these people, they believe that India should practice universal adult franchise. That means all should be given the right to vote, irrespective of whatever strata they belonged to. I hope I'm clear. Moving further, in the journal Young India, underline the name of this journal. Journal is the writing. Okay. So Gandhiji wrote in Young India, he had written in 1931 against the practice of giving right to vote to only propertied and educated people. Gandhiji considered this is an inhuman and unjust practice. He demanded the right to vote for all adults of the country. A, a minority of people couldn't be allowed to rule the majority who were peasants and laborers. So now, Gandhiji, in his article in a journal called Young India, specifically said that India is a country where all should be given the rights to vote, not just the educated and the rich. He said, educated and rich are so less in number. India has more of poor people and laborers and peasants, the farmers. So he said all should be given the right to vote. Why only just few people are given the right and the government is elected by those few people? What about the poor people? What about the peasants, farmers, uneducated people, laborers? All should be given the right. And he talked about it and firmly. So switch off your mic. My time gets wasted in telling you all this. People in Britain and the USA had to wage a long and powerful struggle to get universal adult franchise. In 1948, a movement called Suffrage Movement began in the USA demanding right to vote for women. Please, children, be very careful, understand this paragraph thoroughly. In Britain and USA, people were struggling. They were wanting universal adult franchise. That means voting right for all. And in that connection, a movement called Suffrage Movement. It began in USA. USA is United States of America. Now there, the people said that all the people, including the women, should have the right to vote. That means in USA, earlier the women were not given the right to vote. So in 1848, underline the date, underline the movement's name. It is 1848 and the name of the movement is Suffrage Movement. Okay. Now there were hunger strikes to press for their demand. Women got the right to vote in New Zealand in 1893, in Australia in 1902, and USA in 1920, in UK 1928. Even today, in many countries, only people who own property and are educated are allowed to vote. See how pathetic it is. Now, the movement, which was known as suffrage movement, it began in America, and the women were not given the right to vote at that time. The women were considered that they were just looking after the household. They have got nothing to do with politics. But then it was strikes were held, people demanded justice, people stood for adult franchise, people stood for universal adult franchise. That means all should be given the right to vote. And it was very much later that the rights were given. In New Zealand, it was given in 1893, in Australia 1902, in USA it was 1920, and in UK it was 1928. Now, India was the only country that, as soon as it got its independence, it started practicing universal adult franchise in its first elections only. That means in 1952. I hope I'm clear till here. Coming to the last paragraph, women and the downtrodden people all over the world had to wage a long and powerful struggle to get the right to vote. Women's struggle to get voting rights gained momentum during and after the First World War in 1914 to 1918. Please underline the dates. That it was during the First World War that the women got the right to vote under various situations and circumstances. Clear? Moving further, during the war, most of the adults, just a second. Okay. During the war, most of the adults and able bodied men went to battlefronts. Women came out of their houses and started working in factories and other places. They began organizing and managing different kinds of work. So many stereotypes about women were demolished. Many suffragettes were imprisoned when their demand for right to vote became militant. They were forcibly fed in prisons. Gradually, they united and organized a great campaign. This is called the women's suffrage movement. There have been movements in several countries demanding right to vote for all. Now, here this paragraph ends it so well. It says that during the First World War, when most of the soldiers, along with the soldiers, the common people of those countries also went for war. So now all men were out for war. So the work was suffering. The people at home, the families did not have food and money. So the women came out of the houses. They took up the charge. Since men were fighting, ladies took up the part. They went and did the odd jobs. They did the work which men used to do. And it was gradually realized that women are not weak and they should also be given the right to vote. And finally, it was later on, every country had to follow the women's suffrage movement. That means the women had also the equal right to cast their vote and elect the representatives. With this, we finish the chapter. Clear? In our next class, I'll be doing or let us do it right now. Let us take up the multiple choice questions. So just let me first tell you, you'll write the index, what is government, you'll write the date, etc., and the detail of the chapter. Then civics, main page, new page, you will write the name of the chapter. You'll do the glossary that is given here. Then you will do the 3 charts which are given. I'll quickly go through. This is one. This is one, the blue one. Then the pink one is the second chart. And this is the third chart. These 3 charts you will draw. And then let us do the multiple choice questions in the book. Exercise A and B. Yes?
Ma'am, we have to draw the maps also.
No, child. Leave the maps. Only that particular chart that is given. The 3 charts that are given, only those you have to draw. Okay? Coming to
Ma'am, your
multiple.
voice is not clear.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll record this A, B, C, D, E exercise and I will send you today. If not today, then tomorrow maybe, even if you do not have a class. Is it okay
Thank
with
you,
you?
ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay.
So With this, we come to an end of the class, and I hope you've understood. I'll be sending explanation 4 and explanation 5 to you all. Clear? Go through it once again, definitely, even if you